So let's say we actually wanted to change our state. I mean, our state is changing, but let's say even after this, we want to click on an item and we want to end up removing it. Well, let's think about how we could end up doing this here. What I'm going to do is, let's see what that would end up looking like. So I'm going to, for the moment, I'm going to put it right over here to specify that what we want to do is that we're going to have some function called remove item. And this item is going to end up getting passed an index. And what we're going to do is we're going to end up composing a new state here. And the way that we'll end up doing that is we'll say numbers equals this dot state dot numbers, and we're going to filter them. Okay? And we're going to filter them. We're not all that interested in the individual number. What we're interested in is the index. And since we're passing in IDX here, I'm going to put underscore IDX here. And we're basically just going to say we want you as long as your index is not equal to the underlying index. And we could do that. We could console.log numbers here. And what we want to do here is we want to end up passing this down. So let's make sure that this doesn't end up breaking anything, which it shouldn't. But what we could do here is that we can end up passing down to our list not only our numbers, but we could pass down the function remove item. So now we're passing this function. And let's go up to our list because that's where we're passing it to. Let's just see that we can find it. Remove item. Let's do console.log, remove item. So every time the state changes, this is going to end up getting rendered. And let's take a look. And we'll see that we can end up seeing our function remove item. And we want to actually put it on this element, this item. So what we could do is we could pass this down a little bit further and say remove item is going to be passed down here. But we really end up having, we have to remove it by the index, which is a little bit tricky. So what we could do here is that we could end up passing a function called remove item. And what we could do is we could say remove item, the one that we end up passing in, when we call it, when we end up calling remove item. So this is what we're passing to our individual component. And since now we have access to the index here, we could actually call the function remove item that was passed in here with this index. So we haven't attached any event handlers here, but just to see that this is going to work, if we go over here and we say we also want to catch remove item, so we've got a separate remove item function for each of the items that's going to work with that individual index. And here we'll see that this ends up getting passed. It ends up getting passed, 4 times here. This is the function that we're passing down to it. And what this gives us the ability to do really easily is to just put an on-click event handler here to say, hey, look, when this ends up getting clicked on, call the remove item that was passed to you. And so it's a little bit tricky, but the idea here is that we're setting it up at a place where our state is going to work. We need to end up getting this indexed. Let's just see if this will end up filtering properly. So if we refresh this and we click on it, we'll see that the list is changing, but we're never seeing a change, and that's because what we need to do here when we make this change, this dot set state numbers. So this is a fairly common pattern. You have some method. That method is going to change the state because this is where the state is living. We pass that method down. The only thing that's a little bit tricky here is that we want to actually use the index. And so instead of actually having to pass the index to our item component, we basically are just going to pass, each item is going to have its own remove item. And when we end up calling that, we're going to end up calling it with the appropriate index. And now if we go back here, we'll see that the items will end up disappearing. If we refresh, we'll end up getting them back.